Hello and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. Michael Gracia here. I am. I know I look a little different. Shave my beard. Don't worry, it'll be coming back. I just do this every once in a while. But I got a great guest tonight. I am a huge fan of comic strips, as you guys know. You could probably tell. I've pointed it out many times. My shelves of Peanuts and Hagar the Horrible and the Wizard of Id and Calvin and Hobbes and Pogo. Everything's up there around me. I love it all. But I don't just love them. I read everything. I spend some of my day on comics.com and other websites. And our guest tonight, you can find his work on comics.com. His name is Brad Perri, and he has a comic strip called Pirate Mike. Let's bring Brad on. Hello, Brad.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming on. Let's
Absolutely.
Put this up. So everyone who is watching, down below is where you can find his comic strip. GoComics.com/pirate-Mike.
That's right.
So, first of all, thank you again for coming on. I've been reading your strip. I don't know how long. Since I discovered it. You know, I don't know how long. Yeah, I know you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
And I've been connected with you. I know on Instagram, I believe on Facebook too, and I see the stuff, and I knew about it from Go Comics. So
Cool.
It's a strip that I've always enjoyed since the beginning of when I started reading it, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because I love to promote the things that I love too and get people excited about the stuff that I like.
And I love to be promoted by people who love the stuff that I do. So this is mutually beneficial. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So any viewers watching, please know. Oh, we already got one comment. I was going to say, please ask questions. You can comment. So Joe Ryan, one of our regular viewers. Hey, Mike, I'm tuning in tonight. Thanks for tuning in. I think you're really going to love this. Joe is actually an up-and-coming artist from a recent grad of the Kubert School in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And so he tunes in and he checks out the guests.
I am envious. That is someplace I would have liked to have been.
Me too.
Yeah.
I thought about going years ago, but it just wasn't in the cards for me.
Yeah, I was not aware of it. I was definitely out of the background as a kid, where it's just you don't have those kind of resources, and all the art books you look at are the how to draw Popeye, and it's a circle, and then suddenly Popeye's done. And it's very intimidating.
So let's actually get into a bit of your background.
Sure.
When did you get into comics? Not making them, but like reading them.
Oh, I have very few memories of my life before comics. I got into comics when I was about 4. Because in the Chicago area on Channel 44, they showed these old. You ever seen those 1966 Marvel superhero cartoons?
I love them.
Oh my! Well, that's what happened. I mean, I fell in love with those as a kid. For anybody out there who hasn't seen those, they basically took the comic books, cut them up, and moved them across the screen. It's absolutely fun. If you're an animation person, probably not your thing. But as a kid, it was just you got to see Kirby, Heck, all of those guys.
Yeah.
And I saw the one that was based on Tales of Suspense 45, the Icy Fingers of Jack Frost.
Yes.
And Don Heck's art, his pen work on Iron Man and Tony Stark, and I was hooked. So my dad started coming. I was lucky. My father loved comics. He also loved comic strips. He was a big Batman and Little Abner fan. Okay. So yeah, he did not deter me from reading comics. And I had another, my mom's side of the family, huge comics fans, very much into Terry and the Pirates, Steve Canyon. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky. I had a very supportive environment for comics.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And as a kid, though, what was some of your favorite comics?
Oh, my comics! I was saddled with a local paper there, the Daily Herald. My parents did not get the Chicago Tribune. Mm-hmm. And the Daily Herald had like half a page of comic. It was just, even as a little kid, I knew this is inadequate. Yeah. Because my mom's side of the family, they got the Chicago Sun-Times and the tabloid paper, and that had pages of comics in it.
Yeah.
So the package that the Daily Herald subscribed to included and this is funny, they actually published them on the Sunday comics in a comic book format. So it was Red Eye, Motley's Crew, Dr. Smock. I even got to see Graves Incorporated with Pat Brady's earlier strip before Rose's Rose.
Yeah.
The death throes of Mutt and Jeff were in there. And I loved those. Those were my comics. And then eventually, of course, like a lot of folks, I show my age, but, Garfield hit. And that's where it started.
Yeah, no, I got Garfield books above me. And
absolutely. I actually just found the first one almost in perfect condition. I got it for $1.
That's awesome.
It was fantastic.
Awesome. I will say this, although I do enjoy Garfield, I was always more of a U.S. Acres fan, and really? I cannot find those books anywhere.
Hey, U.S. Acres is visually appealing. I love the cartoon. I enjoyed the character design. Yeah. I don't know why. I was never able to get hooked on it, though, which is weird because I was a huge Garfield kid.
When I was a kid, and when I've always cartooned. It's the one part of art I was always attracted to.
Yeah.
And I, for years, would just love to draw like cartoon animals. So, and I don't know if that came from like Looney Tunes or watching Yogi Bear and all that stuff. Absolutely. So, Garfield was really just a cat and a dog and occasionally a mouse or something.
Yeah.
But with U.S. Acres, I had ducks and pigs and lambs and all
the farm setting is beautiful.
I loved drawing all that stuff. And unfortunately, like I said, you go on eBay, you can find books, but they're super expensive and they're not in great condition.
That's
So I would love if Jim Davis is watching at any point, or anybody who's with the syndicate, let's get a nice collection.
Let's get some U.S. Acres out there.
Yes.
What was the pig's name?
Orson.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And, I loved it. I mean, when I looked at it, I thought it was great. I don't know why I couldn't get hooked on it, but I love basically anything that has a Jim Davis look to it is in my comic strip DNA.
Yeah, no, I'm a very clean line artist with what I do, but that was what I was attracted to. So that was one of the reasons I read Garfield and Beetle Bailey and High and Lois and all those.
Oh, well, yeah, not even getting into those, because once you start going to the store and you pick up the paperbacks, then you get into, then I was able, the old Signet paperbacks and those pocketbooks. Yeah. Well, that was Beetle Bailey. That was Broomhilda was a big one for me. But like Ty and Lois, all the one, Dennis the Menace, all the ones you say.
So when did you start like getting into drawing? I mean, you read comics as a kid. When did you start drawing?
I think I started drawing in earnest really was with Garfield. I'd always read the comics, but you're a kid and I draw. I wasn't unfortunately, I was not one of the people who they said, they handed him a pencil when he was 3 months old and he never put it down. I was very much into reading them. But once Garfield came out, my cousin Tom and I, we drew them. We started our own comics company, being 10 years old. It was wildly successful between him and me. And we came up with like a whole catalog of characters. And what I tried to draw a comic book, and it was just so long and interminable. It was like comic strip, boom, comic strip, boom. And so that's really when I started, drawing like that.
Yeah, that's interesting you say, because when I was a kid, my goal was to be an animator. And I had some of the worst flip books. And I've done animation professionally, but I had some of the worst flip books you've ever seen in your life. Then I remember it was 1989, and it was Christmas, and my parents gave me a How to Make Comic Strip little like VHS tape and booklet.
Fun.
Bruce Blitz. I don't know if you know.
Bruce Blitz.
And actually, I've had the pleasure to meet him, and I keep this on my desk. But the big book of
yes, I've had that. Sure.
I was lucky enough when I met him to get it signed by him.
That's really cool.
So
that's really neat.
I like that there, but it's just a little inspirational. But that's even though I love the comic strips, that's where my comic strip like education came from. I was like, oh my God, I could tell a story so much quicker than animating.
Yes.
And that's when I became like, I want to do comics. That's it.
Yeah, I knew as a kid intuitively I wanted to do comics. What I couldn't do cartoons. I knew because I'd watched enough cartoons. You see all the credits. It's like, well, you're going to make a movie. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that because I was a bit of a control freak as a kid, I guess, still am. And so I liked the idea. And actually, that's what turned me off to comic books was once I found that the artist had to draw what somebody else told him to draw. I mean, I vividly remember I was sitting on the floor in the outside the living room, and I thought, well, I'm not doing that. But that's comic strips, strips that the one person, Schultz, Watterson, obviously, Little Abner, you have Al Cap, Kniff. I mean, plenty of guys, and they use studio approach. I get it. Lynn Johnson uses it. But as a little kid, it appealed to me because I saw that there were folks who just did it by themselves. Yeah, like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, it's great, and that's what I follow. We got a comment from Joe Ryan. Let me see. He goes, "I love my experience at the Kubert School. It was a fun 3 years, but believe it or not, I'm actually really into the animation world, classic Disney comic strips." He wrote Don Bluth, but I think he meant Don Bluth, who I have an autographed Fievel picture in front of me. I donated to like a Kickstarter years ago or whatever. Yeah. That was one of my rewards. And he says, my comic is modeled after the Archie style of things. And Archie was great comic strip,
Hey, I was going to say, you can do a lot worse than classic Disney and Archie. Exactly. But I love Little Archie. When I pick up an Archie book, if it's Little Archie, I just love. I'm a sucker for that thing, like Muppet Babies. Like, oh, just make the character really small, which you can probably see in my own character.
I was actually going to get to that later. That
everyone's really small.
Yeah, and I actually like that, and we're going to talk later about the size of their characters.
They want to be tall. They always start tall, and then I just keep squishing them. They're very unhappy with it.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you can't go wrong with anything he just mentioned on there. And I spent a little time working as a production artist at Archie Comics back.
Oh, cool.
What was it? 2000, 2001, something like that.
That's really neat.
And I will say this. I didn't work in the digest section. I worked in the regular strip section. Not strip section, book section. But I always liked the little Archie books too. So, which was more digest than what I got to see. Yeah, but I did see the strips come in from like Stan Goldberg, and
that's great.
And that was awesome to see. So like they would come in and I'd see like the strips, whatever size he was drawing at, and just
see the masters at work.
And oh my God, it's so you see that, you see Dan DeCarlo's book pages coming in. It's
that's really an education.
Exactly.
Seeing the original art, I remember as a kid when I finally started going to comics conventions in Chicago. Comics conventions were at the old Ramada Inn, which I don't think is there anymore, but now they do it at the big Don Stevens. But the Ramada Inn, and being able to see original art to me was a real encouraging thing. Is you got to see the corrections, you got to see how the ink actually looked, you got to see the underdrawings. And you realize the drawing, because I got real discouraged for a while, but you realize how much drawing is like building a brick wall.
Yeah.
It's piece by piece, it's methodical, and you just keep building it. So it really helped a lot. And being able to see the actual, like you in the production would have been ideal, because then you really see what goes into making this final product.
And my job was touching up if there were lines out or fixing spelling mistakes if there was that. I actually, just because you brought it up, I just want to share this. I remember my first time seeing an original piece of art.
Oh yeah.
I think I was 9 or 10 years old, and in Port Chester, New York, was the Cartoon Museum that was, like Mort Walker and everybody put together and they had a Bob Kane exhibit.
Oh.
And the first time I walked in and I saw Batman pages huge, I'm like, what? This is amazing. And I stood there just staring at these pages and looking around. And again, I keep a few drawing books on my table that like really inspire me.
Yeah.
This was my first cartooning book I bought at 9.
Yes. I've the handbook.
Figure.
Absolutely.
It's not that I flip through these all the time, but every now and then it's fun to have and just look at the back of these books as like, this is what got me started. This is
look, I still flip through them as much as I can.
Oh, I flip through them too, but I'm not like all day long. It's just I like looking at them, pulling out.
It's just fun to see them.
Yeah, there was even I found on eBay, and this is just fun to look at. You can't really see the cover, but this was the correspondence course of Cartoonorama.
Oh, really? I've never seen that.
And so, like, they have this is really cool. So, like, it's falling apart though. It's old. So, like, they give you a lesson. Lesson 2, heads. Okay.
Oh, wow.
They give you all this little typed information, double-sided, and then they have heads for you to look at.
Very cool.
And then as you go through it, here's the step-by-step process. And
see, that would have made more sense to me. I mean, then the circle, and then frame 2 is a finished Popeye.
And I will say, even though I took the correspondence class at home, which is where you do it, but years later, after I bought this off eBay, this was a fantastic education I got right out of that.
Yeah, I got real intimidated by books. I got real I bought the Marvel book when it came out.
You got that somewhere over there.
That scared the heck out of me. I mean, trying to figure out the perspective. I mean, now I look at it and I go, oh, I can see, but boy, when I was a kid, I don't know, maybe I was dense. But that book, and then later on the Marvel tryout book, like trying to look at, was it John Romita Jr.'s pencil? I was the blue line, like, what is this?
That's somewhere in the other side of the room too. I got both of them.
I love that. Hey, I loved that. I loved them, but I was also like, terrified of them.
Yeah, and I was the same way. I looked at it and I'm like, I can't do this. How am I going to learn to do this? What is this?
I'm 10 years old. I can't draw like John Romita yet.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to do this. So, and although now I can draw a superhero style, it's more of like a Silver Age-ish style. I still go to silly comic strip, drawings. But let's get to your comic. Well, let's get on to the path of your comic. So you said you and your cousin Tom, was it?
Yeah, Tom.
Were making your own comic strips. What were the type of strips you were making as a kid?
They looked an awful lot like other people's strips. And some might call that, it would have been a copyright violation. No, I came up with a Tom and Jerry strip. We loved Tom and Jerry. Mm-hmm. I think that was it. It was called Joe and Jeff. And you're 10 or whatever. And my cousin actually really came up with some cool strips that I still really like. One of them was it's a Batman ripoff, but it was Black Bat. And Black Bat was this guy with pointy ears and a hat and a trench coat, but it was all filled in black solid. And I just thought that was really cool. And then the other one he came up with was called Racer. We both liked Speed Racers, so you got to have one of those. But all the strip was a little drawing of a car that Tom had in different geographic locations. Like suddenly it's in front of the Eiffel Tower, and I still like it. I still tell him I want to see more racer comics. Those are the ones I remember. We had a truckload of them, but those are the ones that I remember.
And so when you started kind of saying, I want to become a cartoonist, what were some of the strips? Was it just Pirate Mike, or did you do other stuff before?
Yeah, it took me a long time. I was raised in a house that was, while very supportive of other people doing art, had kind of gotten burned by it. I had an uncle who was a fine artist, and my own father was an opera singer. Okay. Went to the Met, the real thing. These are no slouches. Yeah. So I figured out real early that, okay, it's impossible to make a living at this, so I'm not really going to bother with it. I didn't really get serious about doing in junior high. I discovered Bloom County, which was inexplicably run in the Daily Herald. And that blew me away. I mean, the Bill the Cat, when they do the interview and Charlie Brown and Mickey Mouse are talking about how Bill lost his mind around the pool. And I just never seen anything like that. And so Bloom County was a big deal in high school, but I didn't really start drawing strips again. Oh, gosh, till after college. I mean, I was not going to do that. And I think I was sitting around one day looking for something to take my mind off of. I was doing law school at the time. I'm not a lawyer anymore. Caveat. And I just started drawing a comic strip again. It was called Inky Town. Mm-hmm. And I'd gotten into writing short stories more than doing the comics themselves. And so I had a character I just played with. I brought back one of my characters that I used to write about when I was a little kid. And I, just for fun, why not? I wanted to see it. And I teamed him up with an ink bottle. You're going to do a cartoon, I'll draw an ink bottle. No one will know what an ink bottle looks like, but I will. Yeah. And they lived in kind of a dump. Like if you ever watch the old Depression era cartoons, everybody's always in kind of a dumpy, dumpy neighborhood. So I try to do that. And it was, after a couple of years of doing it and getting my drawing hand back, mailed that in, got hard copy rejection letters. So that also betrays my age. Whereupon,
by the way,
what's that?
I think we all have hard copy.
Gosh, I hope so.
Do you have them filed away in a cabinet?
Yes, I still have them. For me, it was an accomplishment. Sometimes you're like, hey, wow, I actually mailed something off to a real place.
Yeah.
I think, and I took time off after that because then I was doing law. And after a few years of that, I started doing the comic strips again because my wife bought me one of those memberships on Sherpa, Comic Sherpa, which I hope will come back someday.
I hope so too.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to say, if people who don't know, Go Comics had a section called Comic Sherpa. You paid something like $100 a year, I think it was, and you could upload a comic and run it. And if it ran well and it got enough, you might even be able to make it to the main page.
Yeah, they pick you up to the main page.
And that was. And when it just ended, I was getting ready to put something up there. So
it's a drag. I hope that that they do bring it back. There is a link on the page at the bottom of the page that says visit Comic Sherpa, so you can still see it. And I think Pirate Mike is still on there.
Okay.
The old strips.
Yeah.
But if you go on there and you see the Pirate Mike link and you go all the way back, not only will you see Pirate Mike, you will see Inky Town, which whatever I have left. Oh, Amanda. Hello. Amanda's here. Amanda was one of my fellow Sherpans.
Hello, Amanda. She's someone else I follow on, I think, both Instagram and Facebook.
You've chosen wisely. And I loved it. I think what I did was a strip called Four Punky Puppies.
Okay.
I loved it. It was just dogs. But you can see through all of it, me trying to get my drawing hand back again. And I think I maybe feel comfortable with my drawing. About a year ago, I started feeling much more comfortable with it. I still have a long way to go, especially with my background, my settings I'm really unhappy with. But as far as the character designs themselves, I'm a lot happier with it. But that was kind of the evolution of that. I did one called Baxter Beagle, Evil Puppy Genius. You can see a theme. Okay. I like drawing dogs. I have a dog on Pirate Mike. And so that's kind of how that went.
Okay. And that was all because your wife just gave you a gift. Did she say, was it more of like, she thought you should be drawing again, or
I had been drawing strips again, and she wanted me to be posting them somewhere, and I didn't want to post them on social media yet. But with Sherpa, it gave me a reason to do it, and I'll tell you, I can't say enough about the folks who run that. They were very generous with me, very kind. And I miss Sherpa, and I'm a big proponent of it.
Yeah, I had two friends who had strips on there. One was Roger Phillips, who does the Gray Zone. I don't know if you know that.
Oh yeah, okay.
I think that's one of the best strips. It's for me, it's one of those things where I got a good friend who's not syndicated, and I think he should be, because I think it's that good. But it happens,
Yeah.
And then Francis Francis Bonnet, who does Suburban Fairy Tales,
Yes.
which might be, I don't know why. I think that might be my favorite.
It's fantastic. Well, Francis doesn't he do? I think he's. I've seen him. If I'm not mistaken, he's been doing some writing for Archie too.
He writes for Archie, and I believe he said, I don't want to get it wrong. So if you're watching and I say it wrong, please comment and fix it. But I know I had him on another thing I did a while back, and he said he sometimes also does gag writing for, I think it was Rhymes with Orange.
Oh, really?
I think that's what he said.
That's a good gig.
I don't remember. And we got a comment. Is it Taya Gavin?
Oh,
it says, I missed the pink puppies.
Yeah. Taya's a good friend of mine for a long, long time, and has been one of my really, I can always count on Taya to really be a great supporter. She's very enthusiastic, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome. So Taya, you said, right?
Yeah. Okay,
I want to make sure I'm bad with pronouncing names. I'm sorry. So Taya, thank you for your comment and tuning in tonight. Amanda also says, this is awesome, guys. Thank you. You're very welcome. I'm having a great time talking. And she also says Sherpa was awesome. I miss it too. A lot of talent on there.
Yeah.
And it really was. You saw great up and comers that were, I would like, and I would want to help try to get onto the main page,
Yeah. I think one of the things that with the continuing demise of print newspapers, it's a real loss, because I think part of what made newspapers great was the fact that you had a wide variety of commentary. And I know there are certainly comic strip artists who would disagree with me, but I would say that the comic strips were themselves a kind of commentary that was a complement to all the prose narrative, columns. I always like to say, well, they had prose columns and then they had comic strips. And a lot of times I think the comic strips have more truth to them than the prose columns. And I think the newspapers have really, they've cut off a very important limb by not maintaining and financing the art form.
I agree with that, but I mean, also with the way the industry is going, it's tough to say to keep it around. I mean, if they can at least run them at least on their website somewhere, that would be cool. I don't know if they do.
It's a different ball of wax. Yeah. You got to have them on a page, 2 pages, and it's got to be on paper so you can read them while you're just sitting around. It's just not the digital is, to me, it's just not the same animal.
No, I agree. I think for people like us who grew up, our parents buying the newspaper, and that was the section they would give us or whatever, and we'd run to it. And
or the one I'd have to fight with my grandfather for, because he was still. I got that at a young age. My grandpa was complaining about the comics getting shrunk down. When I was a very little boy. He was a big adventure strip fan, so he watched all his favorite strips get reduced to nothing.
I know, and that's it. I love the adventure strips too. I remember I grew up in a town called Mahopac, New York. It's about an hour and a half north of New York City, and my parents were from Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so we'd go visit in Brooklyn, and my parents, we'd get the local paper to the Putnam, Westchester area.
Yeah.
But in the city, we go see my dad's side of the family in Brooklyn, and they would get the Daily News. Much better comic section than what we had. And my Uncle Joe loved the comics, and I'd actually sit with him. I remember being as a kid, I would sit with him, and he would draw the characters out. I would draw with him, and Andy Cap, any character he could draw.
Not to mention Silly Putty.
Yeah. Oh,
how many comic books that I ruined with Silly Putty?
I know. I did the same thing, but yeah, no. So I remember how important it was. Like, if I didn't read it like with him, I'd kind of read it after him.
Oh, absolutely. And this is another buddy of mine here, Dave Madden.
Yeah, I was going to say
that. It's made the newspaper multi-generational.
Yeah,
it really did. I mean, you could pass the newspaper down through generations that way.
So I'll just read his comment for those. I know he says the strips have made the paper multi-generational for me and my grandpa, who was 66 years my senior. We could always find something to talk about in the paper together, which absolutely true. Now you talk about, did you see what someone posted on Facebook? And
it's not quite the same.
It's not the same.
Time marches on.
Yeah. So let's actually. I mean, we've been talking for about a half hour. We haven't even really touched upon Pirate Mike at all.
I love comics, man. Once you get going down on comics, it's a hell of a rabbit hole, isn't it?
That's the way it is for me. It's one of the few topics I can sit and talk about for hours, not get bored, but I can bore people with.
Well, that's why you got to find other you know, you got to deal with other comics nerds. You know,
exactly. Oh, sorry, I thought I saw a comment post up on my phone, but it wasn't. So anyway, let's talk Pirate Mike. So Pirate Mike. Well, let's talk about why Pirate Mike. Even before we get into the story or anything, why did you choose a pirate?
A complete fluke. It was an accident. I was doodling in my notebook, and the pen, I was using a quill pen and the nib, and it caught on the edge of the Bristol board and did a splatter. And for fun, I figured, well, I'm going to make the splatter into something. So I made it into a sword. Well, swords should be held by something. And I had it, and the guy just turned into a pirate. Okay. So it wasn't going to be a strip. I mean, I just had this little pirate, and then I kept doodling him. And then one morning I was putting on my tie, and it just occurred to me to have this guy cleaning the gutters. And, you know, the pirate cleaning the gutters, I giggled, you know, which for me, that's always the test. I mean, if you actually can make yourself laugh, I mean, I should at least find it funny, even if nobody else does.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where Pirate Mike came from. And so I kept daydreaming about him, and I kept sticking them in the suburbs. And, you know, of course, it's like anything where you grew up, right? It's gonna look where I grew up. And once he's a pirate, you know, you can start doing all kinds of stuff as far as he's rebellious, you know, he's a problem. But then I thought, well, what would be funny is in the suburbs is he kind of he falls in love and has a kid. Now, early on, the problem was, as editors pointed out to me, was what? A pirate? Is he a real pirate? Now, how did he get in the is he really in the suburbs? So I had to go through for a few years this process of standing in the shower and coming up with, as we all should, come up with an origin story. Okay. And finally, one time, it popped into my head that these sprites that I had thought of, they started out in a different strip of their own called Inklings, where they just it was a very violent strip. And they, not for consumption. And they, and I realized, oh, well, what happens to all pirates? They get cursed. Yeah. Right. So they cursed them. So they cursed Pirate Mike to live in the suburbs for the rest of his life. And that's how it happened. So Pirate Mike is a pirate who has been cursed to live in the suburbs. And he has a wife and kid, and he's done his best to adjust to things, but obviously he is not all that well adjusted.
Yes. Yeah. And I was actually just about to ask you for a pitch. I think you did a great pitch.
Yeah, thank you.
Never read the strip. I think that's just a perfect idea. I was actually telling someone at my day job tonight, they're like, what are you doing tonight? I said, I was interviewing you. And they're like, what does he do? I said, well, he does this strip called Pirate Mike. It's about an 18th century pirate cursed to live in the suburbs, in the 21st century suburbs. And he goes, that sounds interesting. I'm going to look it up when I go home. So
I hope he enjoyed it.
I hope he's watching right now, maybe.
Yeah.
Now, we'll get into the characters in a minute, but earlier you mentioned how small your characters are. Yeah. Now, when I saw this and I saw your style, it made me think a little bit of Peanuts.
Yeah.
How we had but your characters are adults, but they kind of have this cute, kid look to all the characters.
Yeah.
And which I enjoy, and that's one of the reasons I'm like attracted to the strip. Was Peanuts an influence on your style?
Yeah. Yeah, Charles Schulz, Peanuts. I was one of the people who came to the strip through the cartoons. I did not know that there was a strip, and then I did not know that. Goodness, you mean the strip isn't called Snoopy? And then on top of it, every now and then in the Sunday Tribune, I'd see that it was called Good Old Charlie Brown. Like Charlie Brown's the main character. What? Who's doing this strip? It's Snoopy. But anyway, Yeah, definitely. Looking, I don't know who the other person who was besides Schultz was Ivan Brunetti. I was in a comic shop one day and I looked up and they had some original art on the wall, and I saw this comic with just this circular head and this little square body. You know, of course, Schultz, right? We all think Schultz. I mean, Chris Ware, Jimmy Corrigan, smartest kid on earth. That's Charlie Brown from the 50s. You know, that's the same drawing. So we're all kind of drinking Schultz water. I think that's inescapable. Yeah. But Brunetti was like, oh yeah, circle on square, and that's kind of where that's kind of where I went with it.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's interesting. And I like well, first of all, I like where your influences come from. I think that's.
Thank you.
I mean, I think everyone has a Schultz, like you said. We're all kind of drinking his water, and
it's unavoidable. If you read a 4-panel strip, it's Schultz, especially the minimalism today compared to again the old ones like Terry and Pirates or Popeye, E.C. Segar, where they drew these lush backgrounds.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of drawing backgrounds. I try to keep it as simple as possible. Yeah. I hate perspective, and especially when you're drawing a strip that's so small. And then
every now and then, if I can pull off a perspective drawing, I'm using it. I don't care how I get it put in there. It's going in there, my friend.
I remember, was it last week? I think it was. I was talking with Tim Jones of Sour Grapes. Yeah. Okay. And we were talking about backgrounds. I'm like, your backgrounds are very minimal. He goes, yeah, I don't like drawing backgrounds. Basically was his answer. He's like, I keep a color or a line to just show there's ground or something, Yeah. And
and that's difficult actually to really pull off the Schultz minimalism. And I'm not trying to suggest that any of us do. But because if you look at the early Peanuts strips, obviously they're pretty commercially drawn.
Yeah.
He was still teaching here in Minneapolis at the art school, the Can You Draw Me school,
which I went to when I was a kid.
See, I wish I had. I did not. But so his stuff, he has backgrounds. He has full backgrounds at one, and so I want to be able to draw backgrounds. I get the same reason that you just said. It's difficult to pull off without turning your panel into mud.
Mm-hmm.
So guys like Al Cap and that, they were able to draw these incredible backgrounds, Roy Crane, because their strips were the size of a barn. Yeah. The originals were mammoth, let alone how they print. I mean, they print them and it would go across the whole screen. It would go across the whole page. So, they were able to work with a much larger canvas.
Yeah. And speaking of that, what size do you work at now? Are you on 8.5 by 11 or?
Yeah, whatever the standard is. I have it in my computer. It's been so long since I've actually looked at the measurements, but whatever is 5 by 15,
something like that.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
What I did to start is I did what a lot of people do is you pick a strip you like,
mm-hmm.
you copy and paste it into a drawing program, and there you go, voila. Then you just have to size it. Now, I did not start drawing digitally until when did the Surface Pro 3 came out? Whatever that is, 6 years ago, 4, I don't remember, 5. But before then, I was using basically everything under the sun. I was like we talked about, you're experimenting with, well, what if I use this kind of paper? What if I use this kind of nib? What if I use this kind of brush? Yet to that. And for production purposes, like you were talking about earlier about correcting mistakes, for production purposes, I went to a computer to speed things up, and I'm still egregiously slow. But that's what I use right now. Is I use a Surface Pro 5 with Clip Studio Art.
I'm gonna see what I have. I have a Pro behind me. I don't use it too often.
Oh, I love it.
I'm more of a Mac-based guy.
My wife does that.
And on the table next to me, I have my Cintiq. I just hooked my laptop up.
Yes, the Cintiq.
And I like the size, the spacing size that I got on there. So for me, I just feel the tap, because I have a 27-inch Cintiq here, so
Okay.
I'm used to such a big size that going
That's
down
nice.
to the surface is like small, and it's
Well, and that's why I haven't gone to get a bigger one, quite honestly, is because now that I'm at the size, I draw about, a panel, and I zoom in and zoom out, draw a panel, and I can sit on the couch or in a chair with it. And it's like a little bit like reading a comic book.
Yeah.
So I believe me, when I go into the Microsoft store or Best Buy or whatever, I definitely play with the Surface Studio, which, is the price of a small car. And, it's fun though. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Do you, I'm sorry, I'm just checking something here.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, when you're on your Surface Pro, what program are you in? You're in Clip Studio, Photoshop?
Yeah.
What do you do?
It's a Clip Studio. I started out with GIMP, the free software, just to see if I liked working on the screen. And I usually tell people that working on a computer is a little bit like using an aluminum bat in baseball. You probably get better pop, but you miss the crack of the bat. You miss the feel. It's just a different feel.
Yeah.
I miss the feel of ink, and if and when I were independently wealthy and had all the time in the world to do, like if I could devote my whole day to it, I would go back to pen and paper or brush and paper, as the case might be. Mm-hmm. I love that. But now, after a few years of it, I really love what I can do with a digital pen.
Yeah.
I get the lines with a digital pen now that I really, really kind of always wanted out of a brush. So I'm kind of happy with that.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I actually do, when I created my stuff, I was using Photoshop. I eventually went over to Clip Studio Paint, just because I like the brushes better.
Oh, yeah? Okay. That surprises me.
Photoshop is great. Look, I've been using Photoshop since 1995. I've been a graphic artist. I've worked in animation. I've done backgrounds. A lot of that stuff is all Photoshop.
Absolutely.
And I can do Photoshop with my eyes closed. Like, I know all key commands.
Well, yeah, you learn the software.
Yeah. But with Clip Studio, I just find some of the drawing brushes are better than the custom brushes that come in Photoshop.
They certainly are for me. I've really I used Photoshop for about 5 minutes. I have a friend who, if you look at Phil Giuliano's strip Best in Show, mm-hmm. Phil knows his way around Photoshop. Okay, I do not. And the number of commands and the number of different features that I wasn't using that just I felt were cluttering it up. What I really like about Clip Studio was how stripped down it was. It's like, this is for comics. If you're really looking to do something else with it, you should probably look elsewhere. So I appreciated that it had a real comics focus to it.
I will say, I told you before we came on, I just finished a children's book.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you. I wrote it and I illustrated it, and I finished drawing it on Sunday. Everything was completely drawn and colored in Clip Studio.
Cool.
I'm using Photoshop though to put the book together.
Interesting, like a publisher. Huh?
Yeah, and to do the lettering in. So like all the text is going to be through Photoshop. So I now figured out a way to use them both together.
That's cool.
And I keep Photoshop for my professional graphic design and stuff, but I find myself more in Clip Studio than anything these days.
I do my lettering. I do not use a font. I draw each letter digitally though. I don't do the some guys I know, like, they'll letter by hand on Bristol and then scan it in and place it. And I'm not.
No, but I was going to ask you, is all your stuff is hand lettered, it's just digitally hand lettered.
Yeah. Right.
You have very neat handwriting.
You know what? It's funny. That was the first thing when I really started looking at comics. That was the first thing I worked on. And the way that it happened, and I believe me, I take great pride in my lettering. The way that happened is I just said, well, from now on, everything I write in my life is going, whether it's a shopping note or you name it, is going to be in my comic book lettering. And the lettering really improved.
That's awesome. I will say this, because I have inked comics, and when I worked for Archie and I had a hand letter, like any spelling mistakes, I cannot write in script anymore. I cannot write in lowercase anymore. Everything is caps for me.
It's a waste of time.
And everyone tells me, wow, you got nice handwriting. Like I wrote, I mean, this is just to remind me later of who's coming on next week.
Oh yeah.
All caps. I can't write.
Exactly it. Hey, that's I don't know, you'd probably,
Yeah, exactly.
same thing. It's like, well, that's just, you get into the rhythm and it's pleasant.
Yeah.
I like writing like that.
Yeah, me too. And when I teach, all my students can understand what I'm writing.
That's another advantage. I have had people, like my wife makes me do all the cards now with the addresses, like, because I've suddenly been, and this is not something I had before. So now my lettering is a gift.
Yeah, that does. It does. I've done the same here, but I still try to.
Especially if you're a Pogo fan, if you read Pogo, the lettering is such an important part of that strip.
Yeah.
You realize the lettering, and it's in comic books too. The lettering is such a part of a strip's personality.
Yeah, so, I had a friend who passed away in July. His name was Dan Necrosis. I don't know if you heard him. He ran the New Jersey chapter for the NCS.
Okay.
And he was a letterer for years.
Yeah.
He would make fun. I mean, he loved to bust chops, but he would make fun of how my handwriting, how I lettered stuff. You didn't like. I'd write a little note. We worked together for a little bit. I'd write a little. Like, can you guys please make sure this gets done? And he's like, you didn't send her your text properly. He would just go nuts. And if I had a hand letter, something, he's like, just give it to me. I'll do it.
Yeah, pro letterers, the guys who that's what they do.
Yeah.
I would never show them my lettering. I would deny it. I mean, I would just say, yeah, I don't know what happens. A troll comes out of the ground and letters each one of my strips before I can stop him. It's terrible. I don't know how it happens.
I'm actually thinking, I told you I was trying to bring back one of my old strips before we went on. I was always using a font. I'm starting to think hand lettering might be the way to go for me, because I did enjoy it. It's just time consuming.
It's time consuming. Well, that's the other thing. The other thing I get out of lettering my strip by hand is I use it as a warm up.
Yeah.
If I'm going through the strip and I'm doing the lettering a lot of times first, over if I have a rough sketch, I'll do the lettering first because it helps me get warmed up. Some people do sketches of their characters. For me, once I feel my letters are looking the way I want them to look, that I have that kind of control and I'm feeling good about it, that's my warm up. So, I mean, I get the benefit, but I totally understand, man. It's why I don't do my corrections in analog. I do my corrections digitally.
Yeah, we got another comment from Pat Sandy. Says,
yes.
Hey guys, hello, Pat.
Hey, Pat.
Pat does has another great strip out there.
Yeah.
Which I'm sorry, Pat, I'm blanking on the name right now, but I read it on Instagram like daily, and I'm one of your likes all the time. I love your stuff, and I'm sorry I'm blanking on your comic's name right now, but it's great. I love his drawing style and everything.
Yeah, it's a real loose. I like the line.
Yeah, me too, and that's what attracted me to it when I found it on Instagram.
Right.
And I followed it. But let's get to your characters again. We haven't even hit. Yeah, usually I told you I do an hour. We're going over an hour tonight. So let's talk about your characters. So there's Pirate Mike, there's his wife Eileen, and his son Billy are the three main, I would say.
Yeah.
Let's tell us about them.
Well, let's see. Eileen, for some inexplicable reason, decided to marry a pirate who fell out of the sky on top of her picnic. So there's something in Eileen where she likes the pirate, and something in Eileen where Mike likes her. That is a relationship that it lets me do. Pat says next door neighbors.
Yes, and you're very welcome. Yeah. Next door neighbors. It's a great strip. You guys check that out. I'm gonna have to reach out to him and bring him on one day.
Please do. I would like.
I'd love to hear about his stuff. But let's get back to your stuff.
How the Browns are doing. He's a Cleveland guy. So Eileen and Mike, I wanted to do like kind of a I like Alice Cramden. I think of the Honeymooners, and I also really enjoy I Love Lucy, except I want Mike to be Lucy.
Okay.
And I want Eileen to be Alice Cramden. Okay. So that's kind of how that works. Is I think I'm doing a woman's buddy strip, and one of them is a guy pirate. I debated in the past about making Eileen a pirate too, and I just didn't do it. She is like Zeppo in the Marx Brothers. You know, Zeppo was kind of the guy pretending to be a middle class guy, and I think Eileen is just the woman pretending to be a suburban woman. So I really enjoy her. Sometimes she's my favorite character, and I think there are other people who agree with me where they really look forward to Eileen because so often she's the one bailing Mike out. Yeah. And her reactions to Mike aren't always sympathetic, which are the ones I really enjoy, where she and Mike can have not necessarily a Lockhorn's viciousness to them. If I do that, and I have once in a while, I usually get people leaving the boomer humor comment on the strip, and then I have to admit how old I am. And I tell them, well, that's kind of how it is for me at my age. People my age, we do like it. Yeah, and then let's see, Billy has gone through a couple of weird iterations. I've had Billy be a punk. I've had him dye his hair multiple colors. Now he's kind of a weird, he's a smart kid who doesn't apply himself in school. And is a pirate in a different regard than Mike. But like good kids, he wants to point out that his father's a hypocrite. So Mike is constantly sending Billy to his room. Billy is like one of these truth tellers. Eileen there's nothing Mike can do about Eileen, because it's his wife and he's doomed. But when Billy speaks up, Mike invariably can ship him off to the bedroom. And I want to do more with Billy at school. I have him with a friend, and I think as I do more school strips, Billy will, and he likes comics. The other thing, Billy's favorite comic character is a character called Revenger Man, which is, again, showing my age, is my little comment on where I think comic books have kind of gone off the rails. So, Revenger Man, I have a lot of fun with.
No, hey, that's great. I got to say, I think I'm not going to ask you your age, but I feel we're kind of around the same age because we got a lot of the same influences. And when you were mentioning how you see Alice Cramden and I Love Lucy, and you mentioned the Marx Brothers, I'm like, that's everything I watched.
Yeah,
and I love, and now that you say that, I'm looking at your strip a little differently, and I can see certain aspects of those type of shows. And
that's very kind.
Popping out in the characters like personalities now. I can kind of see it a little bit. I didn't think of it that way, but now you're telling me where your inspirations are coming from.
The secret is out.
Yeah.
I'm ripping off the honeymooners instead of a bus driver, he's a pirate.
That's fine. I mean,
and they got a kid.
Who was it? God, what was that one? There was the one with the two dogs. Was that Goober and the Ghost Chasers? Or was that Hanna-Barbera? I don't remember.
I know the wacky Phantom,
the Funky Phantom, yes.
Funky Phantom, Jabberjaw. I mean, Speed Buggy. I mean, you just start going down. And I've watched them all.
Yeah, me too. I have a bunch on DVD in my closet. Let's see. Pat says, "Are there other shows you're influenced by?" The I Love Lucy inspiration is very cool. So, anything else that you could?
I'm trying to think. It's Honeymooners and I Love Lucy were probably the ones that I've enjoyed most as a kid. I'm trying to think of, because Lucille Ball. I mean, my gosh, I'll watch anything with her in it. Yeah, she just cracks me up. And again, Alice Cramden. But I'm trying to think, and those are usually the ones that I really try to think of when I'm thinking about the marriage dynamics. I'm sure I can't imagine that, Green Acres. I'm sure Green Acres, as far as instead of putting a lawyer out in the middle of a farm so I don't know if it's like an inverted Green Acres because I'm sticking Mike in, sticking him in the city. But that's another one that I've ingested awful. And obviously I don't think, Eileen is much tougher than Green Acres. So I think there's probably far too much antenna television in my head So you will probably be able to spot more influences than I can.
Yeah, I'm gonna now have to look and go back and read some older strips because I grew up on Nick at Night and Tennessee Cozy, all that stuff was, you know, I've always said this. My favorite sitcom of all time is the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, there you go. There's another one. I mean,
and I still watch it on Hulu every now and then. I've been going through the season and all of the series, and it's one of the shows that constantly make me laugh.
Yeah.
And I think I see a lot of sometimes how I write coming out of like Dick Van Dyke or any of the shows you mentioned, Marx Brothers, and complete silliness that no one else would understand and be like, oh,
silliness is very important to me.
Yeah.
And it also does show my age because I'm not as keen, you know, I'm not as keen on a lot of the what I would say is very good. It's very funny. It's very clever.
Yeah.
And it's not my bag.
Mm-hmm. Well, your stuff is great, so don't worry about what your bag is or not. You're doing what's great in your own.
All I got to do is post something on Reddit when I want to feel humble, so that's not a problem.
So let's talk about some of the other characters that you got. You don't have to go through them all, but he's got a mother-in-law. Well, we can. I mean, he's got a mother-in-law, which is a very typical mother-in-law type of character, which is it's great. It works.
Yeah, there's a TV show in there somewhere too. Judy, I always have to give this disclaimer. Judy is nothing like my actual mother-in-law, whom I love very much and have a wonderful relationship with. The only similarity that I would say would be between Judy and my actual mother-in-law is there's a fire to them and a hairstyle, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But Judy is, I mean, maybe, you know, I'm thinking Bewitched, the mother-in-law in Bewitched, probably.
Okay.
But she's a tough cookie, and I don't use her enough. Mm-hmm. I definitely want more Judy. The more Judy I can work into a strip, the better, because she's merciless. Yeah.
Okay. What about? Excuse me. Sorry. What about Ninja Nancy? So you have Pirate Mike. You have a pirate. You have to.
Yeah, gotta have. You know, there's a strip out there, Ninja and Pirate, and you know, that's a great strip. And I need to use Ninja Nancy's another one. I've had her show up. Of course, part of the problem is that Ninja Nancy is the mistress of silence. Mm-hmm. So I do have one Ninja Nancy in my head that I haven't drawn out yet that I don't know if people will like, but I find entertaining. Mm-hmm. So as far as I know about Ninja Nancy is that she's Eileen's college roommate. Mm-hmm. And apparently she went on to become a ninja. But yeah, Mike is pretty much helpless in the face of silence. Mike, as he likes to say, prefers the chaos of cannons. Yeah, Mike's more of a bull in a china shop.
I like that. We're going to get back to your characters in a minute, but we got a question from Joe Ryan who asks, what is your best advice for a new creative breaking into the industry from an independent creator standpoint? Any feedback would be most appreciated.
Sure. I think chances are, if you're watching this, you're probably already doing the first one, which is you got to make comics. One thing I really like about comics as opposed to other forms is you can't really say if you're either doing comics or you're not, mm-hmm. you know. And the beauty of it is comics these days, I think, have a much broader range of what's acceptable. Like if you look at Linda Berry, I think Linda Berry's Making Comics book is, to me, that would be the book that I would give someone, because Linda Berry, I think, has the right idea about what comics are, that mm-hmm. They're this tapping into your child. They're tapping into this vision, of clarity. And it encourages, it's punk in a sense, and that it encourages you no matter, people say, oh, I can't draw. Well, that's baloney. Everyone can draw. You just don't like it. You know, you may not like your style, but you got to start somewhere. And if you really want to see a strip that stinks, go find Pirate Mike on Comic Sherpa and go to the very beginning, because you'll see my other strip that I started doing, and it's It's me struggling with learning how to draw again after taking a very long layoff. And you got to start somewhere, and you don't get worse. It's something you do every day. So I'd say that's number one. You got to just throw yourself in there, make them. Are they going to stink? Yes. Can't avoid it. Okay. And the only way you get better is by doing it. You don't get better by thinking about it. The second part, now actually breaking into the industry, keep in mind, if you have a day job, the same way you treat people at your day job is the way you want to treat fellow comics creators and editors. Okay, getting your work rejected and then sending off nasty grams. How far is that going to get you at work? Probably not real far. Okay, so being kind, it's the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And I think if you make yourself available, go to conventions, and really you're just trying to meet people. I think one mistake is made is obviously there are portfolio reviews. People gladly review your portfolio. But more than that, if you run into somebody and you just start shoving your portfolio in their face, boy, you'd better be Neil Adams or something to pull that off. I would say that it is more important that what people are looking for are good working relationships. Can they work with you? Okay. And in comics, it's really, really, really important because if there's a breakdown in those relationships, it is very difficult to get a good product out. So I'd say the second thing is go to conventions. Go to conventions. Say hi to these creators, interact with them, be nice. Okay. And I think you're just trying to make, I always tell people they call it networking. Like I call it making friends, and you figure out who you click with. You're not going to click with everybody. It's just the fact of the matter. So I'd say those would be the two biggest things to me. Make sure you're always doing comics. You don't want to say, hey, I've got this 12-issue miniseries that is galaxy spanning. No. Get work. Do a page comic. Put it online. Get it on Facebook. Get it on Twitter. See what happens with people. Webtoons. So that would be the first one. The second one is make friends. So that would be. I hope. I'm sorry if that's not more. If you're an established person in the industry already and you're already dealing with editors, then you're way out of my ballpark.
No, but I think that's great advice. I mean, and the other thing I'm just going to add, because this is something that I make sure I do when working with people, meet the deadlines and always communicate. If something comes up that you can't meet it, make sure and something I always tell my students, if a deadline is Friday, I want to see it done by Monday so I can look at it to tell you to correct things so you can have it in. I mean,
you got to set your own deadline earlier. Yeah. That deadline means it's in their hands.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're finishing it up that morning, which, again, I understand, everybody's got their thing. But because what happens if you miss deadlines? Mm-hmm. They're going to stop giving you work.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that, because they've got their own people breathing down their necks that they've got to go talk to now when your stuff isn't on their desk.
And it can cost the company money too.
Cost them money, and it's about being kind.
Yeah.
Being considerate and realizing that there's a person on the other end of that job. And it's really hard. It's hard to do.
It is. But it's if you love this stuff, it's very rewarding at the end of the day. There are days I sit in a studio for hours, and I'm literally talking like 8, 9, 10 hours doing work. I come out, I'm exhausted, I want to pass out, and the first thing I do is I grab my sketch pad and
I understand that. And and that's what ideally, I think Linda Berry talks about this. Ideally, what you're doing is something you would already be doing anyway.
Yeah.
So,
So, hold on, I got a screen blocking a little bit because I'm looking at your characters because there's certain ones I want to make sure I ask about.
Good.
So let's well, first of all, you mentioned you have a dog. You always like drawing dogs. Let's talk about Puppy Patch, the family dog.
Yes. Patch is basically, if you look at my old 4 Punky Puppy strip, it bears a striking resemblance to the main character from that strip. One thing I try to do is cannibalize my strips as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So every strip, like I can see Inky Town, I can see 4 Punky Puppies, I can see strips, other strips that just never got off the chalkboard. I try to cannibalize. I eventually get to the point of thinking, if I come up with another strip, I'm like, okay, well, how can I plug this in so I can use it? Because I'm not going to do another strip. I mean, it's Pirate Mike or bust at this point. So Patch is he's still taking shape. I've had him as being antagonistic to Mike. I've had him as being kind of Mike's ally, but antagonistic to other people. And he's been leaning more in the direction of my family dog, who is kind of he's on the make. I mean, the dog constantly wants food. He's always looking for food. He's very nice, but he never gets really what he wants. And he winds up in the kennel, which is, again, Mike. He sends his son to the room, and he sends his dog to the kennel. And then Patch is stuck. So Patch, the pirate puppy, he definitely has some. Last I saw him, he was being thrown into the air as a result of an anti-gravitational device. I don't know if I ever showed him coming down. Ooh. So he might still be floating around up there.
Might be floating up there. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's go to a few of the other. We'll just look at the main characters for the most part. Astronaut Al. Tell me about
Astronaut Al. Astronaut Al is someone I've trotted out in my head in a separate strip any number of times. My grandfather's nickname for my grandmother, Alice, was Al. So one of the things that I like about Al is we don't even know if Al is human. Okay. I love 2001 Space Odyssey. And I love movies that play with the idea of, human consciousness and robots. Now, I don't think I'm doing anything like, serious, like, forethought. I'm going to, explore these questions of consciousness. But I like Astronaut Al has become my excuse to do weird stuff. So every now and then Al will show up with like 5 other Als from different timelines. Al is really very, he is afraid of heights. He lives in his spacesuit. He's performing a climate analysis for NASA, and all he has to do is live in his spacesuit. And he likes that because he finds that more appealing than living outside of his spacesuit. He grows marigolds. He really likes marigolds. Let's see, what else? He has a cat. His cat's name is Schrodinger. And yeah, well, I look at Astronaut Al in that regard as like a little bit of a Schrodinger's thing. Like, you don't know what's inside Astronaut Al.
Yeah.
And I love that I love that Astronaut Al does not have a face. It's just a big blank screen. So Al is also kind of Pirate Mike's inept conscience. When Mike is doing something evil, Al will point out to him, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. And then Mike will say, actually, I don't care what you think. We are doing it. And then Al jumps on board and helps him. So Al is inexplicably, I guess, drawn to Pirate Mike's chaos, but is also very happy to be safely enclosed in his own spacesuit.
Okay. That's good. Hold on. I'm sorry. I was just reading some comments. So we got one from Joe Ryan, says solid advice, very valid points. Thank you guys. Very welcome. And somebody named Bobby Joe, who I don't know, says good job, Gracia. Keep it up. I'm assuming I might know who they are because very few call me by my last name like that.
Hey,
so hey, is what it is. So thank you. I'm got a lot more planned. So and this is a very fun interview because we've already hit over the hour mark, and I rarely do that. So
I love talking about comics, and I really like talking about my comics. So it works
out. You mentioned the sprites earlier, who came from another strip. Is there anything else you want to add about them?
They are truly that is my Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers, Tex Avery excuse.
Okay.
They're my Deus Ex Machina. Anytime I need something to happen, I can pull the sprites out. They are the Felix the Cat magic bag of tricks of the strip. And they are fun to write because they are sociopaths. They do anything they can as long as they like doing it. And that includes making Mike miserable at various points. So they're not that bright. Their arch enemy is Eileen. Eileen knows how to handle them. So they're afraid of Pirate Mike's wife. But other than that, I've been thinking lately about how to bring them back again. But I have all kinds of, anything works with them. They just pop out of, they pop out of holes in the ground. They're really obnoxious characters, and I love them very much.
Let's look at the next one you have is Polly. I'm looking down your list on.
Polly the phone. Yes. That. Oh, actually, I forgot to tell you about that. That I did a strip for a while called Screen Time that I unsuccessfully submitted to everyone. Yeah. And the gist of the strip was a person living with all of his screen devices, whether it's a laptop, a phone. What else was in there? Laptop, phone, tablet. But anyway, they all had their own little personalities. And I merged them all into one single phone because I realized that, well, once Screen Time didn't go anywhere, like, well, what, again, you cannibalize it. Yeah. So I'm going to put it in Pirate Mike. So Polly is the Polyphony 9000, named after our good friend Hal 9000. And she is the virtual assistant who makes Mike's life miserable. She's in the refrigerator. She's on his phone, obviously. She's on his computer. So if it's all linked together, as we all know, we're all, even when our devices are off, they are listening to us. And so I want to do, and also because that's the Polly is the parrot. So I like the idea of Mike's parrot being phone. They don't get along. The phone is very dismissive of Mike, but the rest of the family really likes their virtual assistant. So that is Polly, and I've enjoyed when I can break Polly out. I do enjoy it.
Now well, Polly, would you consider that a male or female character?
I consider Polly a female, though I don't know if I've made it very clear in the strip. It's kind of like kind of like Astronaut Al. There are a lot of things that I leave that are vague in the strip, not by design, but just by the way it works out. And one thing I love about doing Pirate Mike are the people on Go Comics are so involved. They love commenting. I enjoy commenting with them, and I enjoy telling them I don't know. It's like, well, what's going to happen, or how did this go? I don't know. And that's one of the things that I love about the comic strip form. It is a weird unfolding to do a comic strip because you can't plan it out all in advance, and things happen that are very surprising. For instance, I did not start out with the idea of Mike being cursed, and now I love it. Now I can't imagine the strip, and this is actually due to editorial comments, so thank you to the editors. I can't imagine the strip not involving Mike getting cursed.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Okay, we're going to look at one more character, and I want to move on to another topic real quick. But
great.
We'll look at the last one that's under the main characters here, Manager Matt.
Manager Matt. Manager Matt is probably me at about 22, maybe younger. I don't know, but very young. Manager Matt is, as I think it says there, is an upwardly mobile MBA grad. And he's got big plans. He's very bright. He knows what he's doing. He has taken on the job at Pizza Pirate as a challenge. He's one of these guys, and he's going to succeed. That's the thing. Like I want Manager Matt, as those of us who have had good managers and they are worth their weight in gold, because we've all had managers who aren't terribly talented as well. Yeah. A talented manager, he's still at, a large corporation. And so Manager Matt, he's in a corner sometimes enforcing these policies, and the only person he can get to take this job is Pirate Mike. It's a horrible job. He's a party host at a pirate-themed pizzeria for children. So it's like Chuck E. Cheese, except even more poorly financed and not much vision. So I like that Manager Matt. I think I've dropped an anvil on his head. But so he gives me the chance to have that person who's really gung-ho, real gunner, full, and succeed. And I'd like to contrast that with Mike, who feels obviously trapped in a situation of his own making, seeing as how he's to blame for getting cursed. So, you know, that's where Manager Matt comes in. He's my excuse to force Mike to deal with the realities of holding on a job that many people. I'm lucky to have a job, you know, that isn't at a pizzeria. Some guys are really good at it. Manager Matt is one of them.
Yeah. And I got to say, your whole cast is fantastic.
Well, thank you.
And I can honestly, we probably spend another hour just on finishing up the character.
That's probably my favorite part, is making up characters. I just really enjoy it. The trick is, you can always, as you can probably tell from the strip, I keep making up characters, and I keep thinking, oh, I really got to do another series of strips with character blank to really develop them out. Oh, wait, but I could have a strip about a talking ice cream cone. You know, and so then I do a talking ice cream cone. So I've got to, you know, that's one of those things that we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, no, I believe me, I get it. I'm the same way when I draw my comics. There's always new characters popping on, and I think I told you I wrote 30 strips in the last couple of weeks to bring back an old comic of mine. Great. I think I have 3 or 4 new characters I had to create just to tell the stories I want.
I support it.
Yeah, thank you. But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about when you went from Comic Sherpa over to the main page. How did that come about for you? I mean, you went from paying for a site to not paying. You're now syndicated as a cartoonist, which for I think a lot of people growing up in our age group, that was the cartoonist dream.
Yes.
You know. So you succeeded at which, congratulations, by the way.
That's very generous. I appreciate that.
What was the process like? When did they say, you know what, we want to move you over to the main page?
Well, I had submitted Mike previously, and I was very fortunate. Again, you know, I was very fortunate that I received comments from 2 editors, and one of the best comments that I was able to get was from someone who was very enthusiastic about the strip, but was also able to be candid with me about where the strip wasn't quite going to be able to cut it in that environment. Whether it was structural, and you know, and I have this note, and I still look at it, and I'm still trying to follow its lessons. I still view Pirate Mike as very much in development. And what happened was I did a bunch of strips for, I think I took another year or 2 working on it. And I submitted it again, and I'd forgotten about it. I mean, you know, I'd moved on to, you know, drawing screen time. You know, I was still doing Pirate Mike, but I was like, okay, time. I've sent it off twice. Time to work on a different strip.
Yeah.
And one day I was mowing the lawn, and this is back when I used to keep my phone in my pocket. I've stopped, thank God. But I was mowing the lawn, and I looked at my email for some inexplicable reason, and there it was. It was a letter from the Go Comics gang, and they wanted to move Pirate Mike over to the big page. At that point, you know, you have to come up with, you know, some promotional materials. They give you an idea about what they could use as a banner, what they could use as an ad. You want to pick your, you know, publishing schedule. Initially, I did it daily because I had enough of an archive built up where I was able to do that. And you pick a launch date, and you also sign a contract. I'm very fortunate that I feel Go Comics is the premier place to be for comic strips right now. If you're looking for someone who's willing to experiment and be really stretch the form, I don't think there is anybody else playing that game. So to me, Go Comics is the place to be if you're a newspaper style cartoonist, comic strip artist. And obviously, there are plenty of folks who do not gear their work to a general audience or a newspaper comic strip audience. So I'm trying to be, you know, for its specific purpose is what they do. They've been wonderful. So I went down. They're in Kansas City, so my wife's family is in Kansas City, so I get to stop by every now and then, say hello. Very, you know, very kind. And I think that's pretty much how it worked. I will say that it took I started doing Pirate Mike in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I think they launched Pirate Mike in October. Oh, actually, this is the 2-year anniversary. In October, I think it was October 13th of 2018. They've been, it's really been great. I've really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to, as you can see, more, as you know, you're writing, we're perpetually in the process of writing our next batch. I finished a different project that is making the rounds now. So I'm kind of coming out of that coma, and my very patient readers have been enjoying the archives for too long. And I'm about to get, I've got one, I think I got a storyline here that I'm going to be able to break out pretty soon that people are going to be able to have fun with.
Awesome. I just want to say we got another comment from, I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong. It's Mike Wilkie.
Oh, yeah.
So, hi, guys. Mike, I just actually commented on one of his Facebook posts today. Very fun.
Mike's a veteran. He's up here in we had a great comic scene here in the Twin Cities. I have to tell you, we've got a lot of really, not just, in the professionals and obviously the history with Schultz and other number of great cartoonists, Cliff Starrett in Minnesota, but we got a great bunch of people up here in the area. And I include Amanda in there. Amanda's in the Dakotas. But
okay,
we kind of, the Twin Cities, we cover all that.
And I'm from New York. To me, New York's like the center of the world.
Well, it is, rightly so. I was, I've been there. I thought, big deal. I grew up in Chicago, and then I got there. I'm like, oh, this is like 8 Chicagos stitched together. It's a different universe. It has its own gravitational center.
It's a very interesting. I mean, I grew up, like I said, I grew up an hour and a half north of the city, but I would go into the city for Comic Cons and all this other stuff, and I love the city, and in my head, and I've mentioned my other days, I'm like, we need to move. We just need to get out of New York. And then it's like, but where do I go?
Chicagoans are a little the same way. I mean, people do quiz me as to when I'm coming home or, why I would ever move. Midwest, says Amanda.
Midwest, is that a fist bump?
Midwest.
So, I'm sorry, that just made me laugh.
You call us flyover territory. Well,
you know what? I'll be honest. I haven't left the East Coast, so I don't know. I've been from Maine to Florida. I haven't been out past like Philadelphia.
Really
and I'd love to go out and see some. But it's always funny. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of great cartoonists in my area and throughout the states here. But like when you think of someone like Charles Schultz, who grew up in your area and who then moved out to California, or you think of someone like Jim Davis that we mentioned, it's all like Midwest. These like big guys came out of the, and I'm not saying we didn't get big names come out of New York. I'm just saying it just feels like if you didn't grow up in the Midwest, the comic, your comic culture might be a little different. And it's I feel like in New York, it was the comic book scene over the comic strip scene.
You might be right with that, because the comic strip scene, I don't know. I mean, obviously it used to be in New York, especially in the early part of the century, but how can you escape, again, the gravitational pull of Marvel Comics and DC Comics?
Exactly, yes.
That's.
Yeah. So anyway, let's just move on. I got 1 or 2 more things I want to cover. Then we're going to kind of end, because we're reaching a point where I have to go to work in the morning.
That whole thing. Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I could honestly, I feel like I could stay on for hours and chat with you here.
Oh, but, wonderful.
But it's wind down time for me.
Yeah, you're on the East Coast too.
Yes, and
I'm just warming up.
Yeah. What is it? What is time difference? You're about
an hour. Is it 2?
It's almost 10 here for me.
So. It's almost 9 here.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, when we were talking about a character, we talked about moving on. One of the things we talked about before you came on was your website. I want to talk a little bit about your website, because, like I say, I really like the look. I mean, it's a
it's kind of a Beauchamp did that. He's top notch.
It's very I don't want to say simplistic, but it's just easy to read, easy to follow. It's so straightforward. Everything is there that you need. but you stopped updating it in May 2017. What happened?
Yeah, here's why. Once I decided at that point, I was on so many. I have been in a 3-year process of minimizing my time on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a copywriter. I write ads. So I'm on a computer looking at a screen all day. And I found myself with the website is where it started, but between the website and social media and then Go Comics, I'd come home and I was back on a screen. So what I did is I thought, okay, where do I really want to maximize my audience? And I know that I'm sure there are plenty of people out there, Brad Geiger, who will say, oh, you got to have it be your own site. I want them from Go Comics. I mean, my thing is I always wanted readers from Go Comics, other people who are reading a lot of strips. And so, I left the website because it is beautiful. Brock did an excellent job with it. I love it. I might use it again someday. Who knows if they kick me off Go Comics for God knows why. But it is something there. Every now and then I'll get a comment from someone. Hey, are you still doing your strip? I see you haven't been updating your website. And what I need to do is put a note on the strip after 3 years. Is put a note on the website that if they want to read Pirate Mike, they should go to Go Comics.
Yeah, or even though it's such a nice site, maybe just a redirect to Go Comics site.
Not a bad idea.
I want to say Keith Brown just said, hi, guys. Greetings.
Hi, Keith.
And the wages of sin.
Yes.
Number one, Keith, I know you messaged me a while ago and I haven't got back to you. I'm bad with Facebook messages. For some reason, I'm really good. Like when it's on, he messaged on my Get in Tune page.
Yeah.
If it's on my personal Michael Gracia page, I'm really quick. Same thing with Instagram, but for some reason, I'm slow with my my Get in Tune stuff. But I will be writing you back very soon, Keith. Hopefully this weekend.
Wages of Sin is pretty funny stuff.
Yeah, I've been on his page a couple of times, and because I'll go in and I'll be like, oh, I got messages, and I see it, I'm like, I got to really write this guy back. But it's and I go on and I read it, and I'm like, oh, that's fun. And,
exactly.
So, but yeah, I will be in touch. I'm sorry, there was one more question I had. I just blanked out after that. I'm not blaming you, Keith. Don't worry about it.
No. We had just we were talking about the website.
Yeah, the website, and I mentioned possibly a redirect. The one thing I wanted to ask you is your characters are so much fun, and this is going to be my last question for you. Your characters are a lot of fun. I've said that. That's one of the things that attracted me to it. The look, all this stuff. Have you ever thought of, and I'm not saying, I'm looking into the idea of merchandising. Mm-hmm. Not for me personally to do it. I'm saying for you to do it. And I'm not just thinking like figures and stuff, but I your type of characters could be fun in like card games or a small video game or app or something. Have you thought about branching out into things?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I am as my readers can confirm for you painfully, I'm very slow. Okay, painfully slow. My wife will also confirm this. Asking about jobs around the house. I've done things like T-shirts, I've done mugs, but it's nothing. I've printed up comic book collections of it. The reason that I don't, and I have talked with a couple of buddies of mine who are into that like card game thing. Mm-hmm. Right now it's enough of a challenge for me to get the strip out. Hey, Frank Petrucci from home. Frank is also knows the history of my humor, being that we were both kind of humorous together in high school. So Frank was in homeroom with me. Good to hear you, Frank. Good guy. So I'm a little slow, and so I'm trying to stay focused. What happened is I started doing so much, like thinking about the merchandising and everything, and I'm like, I'm having a hard enough time getting the strip out. And I start resenting stuff that takes me away from doing the strip.
Mhm.
You know, so what I really want is a very rich relative to bankroll a huge merchandising operation. So I'm waiting
Mhm.
for someone to do that who's very rich.
I'm assuming there's someone out there you're talking
No,
to. No.
no. I'll settle for a non-relative too. You know
Yeah,
who's good at it? Have Awkward Yeti? I mean, holy moly!
that's
Nick, he's got that thing's a machine.
yeah.
And here's and in all sincerity, I mean, that's part of the deal is you got to work it. You've got to have the relationships. You've got to you got to do that stuff. Trevor Bell. Hey, actually, Trevor Bell is my a mutual friend of mine, Frank, who married my sister.
Oh.
So thank God he's a good guy. That's always you're worrying about your sister marrying someone, and then she marries like the best guy on the planet. So I'm very lucky, and I think Frank would confirm that. That's not a bad idea because Trevor's done his own stuff too. So good point. But I need him to be rich. Yeah. So anyway, the short answer is I would if I could figure out how to do it without getting distracted by it.
I just because it's when I see things like this, I see marketability in these things, and a lot of comics, always have some kind of merchandise attached to them in some way. These days, it's usually through the artist itself, and
right.
But yeah, no, just because of the look of these characters, I see so many things, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's sorry, I just got a comment.
Lisa.
Yeah.
Hello, Lisa. Thank you for showing up. Another friend.
And I'm sorry if you just showed up. We're gonna be wrapping up right now. It's what time is it by me? It's a little after 10.
Yeah.
So I need to do a little wind down, get ready, and try to get to bed early for work tomorrow. Yeah. But I'm sure we could have done at least another hour.
Oh, at least. Well, hey, you do archives. I mean, I looked at your YouTube site. I mean, you can.
Thank you.
So people can load.
Yes, they can come on and
see the whole thing.
And I'll be honest, I'd love to have you back on, even if we're not talking Pirate Mike stuff. We can talk comics and do a history and whatever you want to do, man. That
would be great. I can pretty much talk about anything nonstop, but definitely comics.
So I'm just going to ask you I'm going to take you off screen. I'm going to ask you to go backstage just for a moment. Let me do my wrap up. I want to just do a little
thank you
off screen. But you guys, make sure you go to gocomics.com/pirate-mike. Check out Brad's work. It is fantastic. It's funny. The characters are likable. They, it's a modern, I'd say a modern classic comic strip. There's so many things about it that have this classic strip feel with this, obviously it's a new comic. You can't really say, what I mean? Call it, it's not as old as Peanuts or all those strips, but I think give it enough time. It's going to be up there with it.
Oh, very generous. Thank you.
All right, guys. So thanks, Brad, for coming on.
Anytime.
And so you guys, that was a great show. I rarely go over an hour, so I'm having a lot of fun. And like I said, if I didn't have to get up for my day job in the morning, I could go a lot longer. This was great. I want to remind you guys that next week, Don Chin is coming on, who is who back in, I think it was late 80s to the 90s was doing parody art, parody comics. He wrote and created and co-created comics like X-Farce instead of X-Force. And one of the most popular was the adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters, which was just a lot of fun. And he's in the process of bringing stuff back. So we're going to learn a little bit more from him next week. So you guys, thanks for tuning in. I will see you next week. Everyone have a great night. Have a great rest of your week. All right. I'll see you later. Bye, guys.